Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a little time to talk to you all about surrender. In the 20 years that I've been teaching students, it's one of the biggest questions that they often ask is, what does this mean to surrender? And of course, for many, it can bring up all sorts of stuff because surrender often means to many people letting go, giving up, giving over your power, those sort of things. And when we work with the ascended masters, as I do, surrender doesn't mean giving up or giving over your power to anyone or anything. It actually means coming out of resistance to yourself, coming out of resistance to the divine consciousness of yourself, letting go of the resistance that you hold, of making this deep connection to yourself. Now, I know a lot of you might say, oh, I don't have any resistance to myself. I don't have any resistance to the divine within me. But in my experience, the major fear that students have on the spiritual path is the fear of their divine light. They don't really fear their shadows, their negativity, their judgments, even their old programs. But what they do fear is their divine light. A part of the ego self fears giving any control to their divine light, the presence of the God self within, the presence of the divinity of you, that really higher consciousness of you. Now, I work with students all the time who want to channel their higher consciousness. And what I see as a divine channel is that one of their biggest struggles is surrendering to that higher consciousness and letting it flow through them. The mind and the ego wants to control them. And so they struggle all the time of just letting it flow. Their mind is constantly asking, well, what's it going to say? What's it going to do? What's it going to ask me? What's it going to share with others? And so everything shuts down. As soon as you go into doubt, questions and fear, everything shuts down. And yet often we don't even realize that. But to really open yourself to the higher consciousness of you, to the divine of you, to a part of you that is wiser, has better connection to the universe, you actually have to surrender your control. You have to surrender the control your mind has. Now, I see many channels channeling, but what they're channeling is their mind. They're channeling the concept of what their mind is telling them they should be channeling. I see this with students all the time. Yet they're not truly bringing through the higher frequency of their being. And so they're very attached to what the mind is saying, to what the channel is saying, and less aware of the vibration and the frequency that's coming through. And the mind attaches to this and thinks, great, this is the higher consciousness speaking. But in truth, it's not, because there is no vibration of higher consciousness. The mind is often speaking what the mind wants to hear. The channel is sharing what the mind wants to hear, or what the ego wants to hear. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's important that those who do want to open and be guided by their higher consciousness to understand that it's not about what is said, it's about the frequency that is shared, the vibration of energy that is shared when you open your channel. Because when the channel is fully open in surrender to the higher consciousness, then all that comes through is higher frequency, higher vibration. And when that occurs, the energy in the room, in the being, in the person is uplifted, expanded. And that energy touches anyone who's in the vicinity of their auric field, which can be very large. But this cannot occur without surrender. It's not about giving over your power. Your power lies in your choice. You can choose in any moment to open your channel or to shut it down, and we do all the time. As soon as our mind goes into judgment, as soon as our mind goes into fear, as soon as we doubt, we question, then of course that flow shuts down. Then there is no frequency. There is simply the ego and the mind speaking. How many times do you sit and you really want to share your higher consciousness, to really open to it, but your fear stops you? You cannot surrender your control. Your fear stops you, whatever that fear might be. Many fears. Sometimes people are frightened of being possessed by their higher consciousness. Sometimes fully embodied by their higher consciousness. Sometimes terrified of what that higher consciousness might guide them to do or share with them. Might open them to a whole new possibility that holds a lot of responsibility, or ask them to do something that actually would change their life completely, turn their life around. But once again, I remind you that we all have choice. Simply because it's us doesn't mean to say you have to do it or you must do it. Although, of course, in my experience, following the guidance of your higher consciousness and not the guidance of your ego will always bring you greater potential. So surrender is one of the keys to the spiritual journey. Surrender of the ego to your higher consciousness, to your higher wisdom. Surrender of your mind to your soul. Surrender of the lower mind that's trapped in all sorts of small stuff to the higher mind that simply has a very expanded view of everything. Letting go your fear, because it's always about fear. You can have doubts, you can have questions, you can have anxiety, you can have stress. The ego is worried about what people are going to think, all of these things. But at the bottom of all of that is your fear. Fear of letting go. Surrender. Surrender your fear. Letting go your resistance to the divine light of you. Because while you're holding on to that fear and that resistance, your mind, very happily for you, is busily creating its version, its view of your divine light. It's busily creating its version of your soul. It's busily creating its version of the presence of the divine of you. So while it's doing that, you never really connected to your truth. So asking you to have a think about that. Have a look at your fears. Look at what you need to surrender. Look at where you're holding control in your relationship to your soul, to your higher frequency, to your wisdom. And then make a deep choice to let go. Surrender helps you to dive deeply into your path. While you're in resistance, you're just swimming on the surface, talking your talk, creating your version of your deep connection to spirit. But until you surrender and dive deep, then that connection can never be real. It's simply something your mind's created to suit your purpose. Purpose of your ego, your personality, the agenda that you've got, or the agenda of others. And until you let all of that go and just dive deeply, you will never know the true connection of your higher self, higher wisdom of you. I invite you to just hold your breath, take a deep dive. Blessings, everyone. Blessings to you.